Thank you, Maureen. I greatly appreciate the introduction, and I'm so honored to be in this industry and to be a part of the aging process, because I'm aging too. And I'm hoping as a result of my experience and my knowledge, maybe I'll do it with more grace and maturity, but probably not. So, but that's okay. So thank you all for taking the time this afternoon into the early evening here to talk about a topic that's really important to so many of us, if not all of us. We're all caregivers in some way, shape, or form, definitely. And I personally am a caregiver for a disabled daughter that I have at home, uh, who's in her late 30s, and this was never the journey we expected by any stretch. So with that in mind, I will occasionally personalize things, and just so we can maybe drive the point home a little further. But with this presentation, we're going to talk about the important concerns and facts and details of caregiving, and some of it's a little sobering. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to upset or unnerve anybody, but these are real facts and figures we're going to provide for you. And then that real understanding of what the impact of caregiving is to the caregiver and also to the recipient in that regard. I'm going to talk a little bit about those signs of stress and caregiver burnout. And they're significant and they're real, and they're very, very important to be looked at and evaluated and accepted and adjusted. So then we're going to talk about tips for promoting some well-being and some resilience to all of these responsibilities and duties that we have as a caregiver, no matter what our role might be. So let's go into, again, talking about all of these things, these concerns and these problems that we see, because they affect us, from every turn as it might be. So who is a caregiver? You can see we've got to, look at the pictures here, from the busy business person to the spouse or the adult child that works with their parent in this regard. We see the mom or maybe the worker, the daughter there on her computer. Maybe she's a remote worker, maybe she's at her office. We also see, maybe a grandchild in the picture or a younger person in the picture down at the lower left corner there. And then we also see again that mom who's in the middle of maybe remote learning and sandwich generation. So she not only has her own family, her own career, but also responsibilities to, parents or aunts or uncles, etc. So we see so much in those pictures. These are all individuals that we are responsible for and deserve our attention and our concerns. So a caregiver comes in many sizes, shapes, etc., and different roles. Some of our caregiving responsibility is long distance. Some of our caregiving responsibility is right here in front of us, day in and day out. And those caregiving responsibilities don't typically fall between 8 and 5 or Monday through Friday. They tend to fall in that clock that runs 24/7. So my hat is off to everybody who faces those never-ending requests and daunting issues as it might be. So let's look at some of the facts, and these are hard to argue with, folks, but these are really invaluable facts as it might be. About 35 million Americans provide some sort of unpaid care to an adult over the age of 50 in the past 12 months. I mean, that's just a tremendous amount of individuals who are impacted by the need to provide care to someone, particularly over the age of 50 years. 16.1 million provided unpaid care for someone with Alzheimer's or other dementia type diagnoses. So we have a prevalent issue here, dementia and Alzheimer's and all the forms thereof that are impacting individuals. And I think that 16.1 million number is going to do nothing but grow in the future. We have a huge baby boomer population that is aging. I think we not I don't think we have more cases of dementia or Alzheimer's. I think we just have a better ability to diagnose and to identify. So again, I think that number is going to grow exponentially in the years, the next decades to come. Americans provided 18.5 billion hours of care, valued at about $234 billion recently. And that's just huge um, when we think about it, and what kind of market there is for caregiving and support. So much of the caregiving that so many of us do is unpaid, but those hours mount up nonetheless, but they come at a cost, either at the moment for the caregiving activity, maybe loss of productivity at work, maybe having to change a career, etc. So that dollar amount is pretty impressive, definitely. 34% of the caregivers currently are over the age of 65, and 2/3 of those caregivers are women. So while this doesn't fall exclusively in the domain of women, it does fall primarily 2/3 of the time in that the task list of most of our women, and most are women as it might be. So serious amount of individuals at an age 65 or more, where they too may be tired, and they too may need some care at some point. And we're going to talk about that specifically, how to identify that, how to mitigate that, how to support that, and what to be mindful of. 1/4 of our caregivers are in that sandwich generation, where they're providing care for an older adult and a child potentially under the age of 18. Those are pretty tall job duties or job responsibilities as it might be, but these are really hardcore facts. You can see we reference the Family Caregiver Alliance for these details, and they're just very real statistics. And our numbers may be gentle here. We may see that they're actually much greater than these numbers, but these are the cited numbers that we have at this time. So the financial impact, and this is huge, among those working caregivers caring for a family or a friend, a member, 69% of those report having to rearrange their own work schedules, maybe decrease their hours, possibly take an unpaid leave in order to meet those caregiving responsibilities that they've either agreed to or they may perceive to be saddled with. Almost 70% of the individuals providing this care have had to make adjustments in their lives to support the caregiving that they're responsible for. I think that's a pretty huge number. Again, these are just scary details as it might be, but honest and earnest and good details as well. So something to be mindful of. Take a note here. Here's some really strong and clear facts and figures as it might be. These are national averages, but you can see there that we've noted that California has a higher than average cost of living, and therefore these figures really actually look attractive compared to the true and more earnest figures that we might see in the state of California. But these are national details. So if you were to, as an example, look at care and support in a nursing home, it runs about $239 a day for nursing home care and coverage. That's about $7,100 a month. I think you'd find in California that if you are going to privately pay in a nursing home, you'd be paying closer to $10,000, perhaps $12,000 a month for nursing home care. In our assisted living, the caregiving support and services would run about $155 a day, or $3,800, $3,900 a month. That'd be pretty light in the state of California as far as a daily 24-hour period charge. I think you'd see it would really hit more closer to the $5,000 mark. If you were to use in-home care to do the caregiving support that you are often providing for your loved ones, you will see that the average rate is about $30 an hour for an agency to come in and provide the caregiving that you might need the respite from, or the opportunity to go back and be either in that sandwich generation or in that working capacity. So it just at just 4 hours a day, that's a tab in a month of $3,600. And as you guys well know, this is a 24-hour day, and it's hard to predict exactly what 4 hours it might be best to choose care to cover your loved one's needs. So this is, again, just a small snippet of the care. Shockingly, to go in the state of California, to go to a 24/7 in-home care agency caregiver, you're looking at about $20,000 a month if the care is 24/7. That is a price tag that I think very few of us can afford and sustain in a long-term capacity. And then a great option is the adult daycare. Right now, this isn't a great option because most of them are closed due to the crisis that we're all in, the pandemic that we have faced for the last year, that we're hopefully seeing the light at the end of the tunnel coming forth. But for the purposes of today, most, if not all, of the adult daycare settings are not accessible to our loved ones. But even they can be a bit pricey from time to time. You can see here at $70 a day, it's a pretty good bargain. 12 days a month would run you just shy of $900. And so this is a really great respite option. It engages the individual in and of itself. But again, when we have pandemics and we have challenges, this isn't an option, and therefore you have to step in perhaps even more than you had previously. Great option when it's up and running. And I hope in the very, very near future, we'll see that come forward and be an option for us. So what impact does this have on all of you guys? I'm probably preaching to the choir, but again, I've got, because you know it, you feel it, you live it, but I've got some pretty good details here that will really substantiate maybe what you're feeling, but what you haven't been able to articulate to other interested parties in your supportive network, such as your family members, etc. Many of our caregivers are they themselves of an older population or growing old themselves. Of those caring for someone aged 65 plus, the average age of the caregiver is actually 63 years old. And with 1/3 of those 63-year-old plus individuals, they themselves in fair to poor health. And yet they are the responsible day in and day out party taking care of someone who is just perhaps a few years older, if not many years older than themselves. So their health is compromised as well. 70% of our working caregivers often suffer work-related difficulties due to their dual responsibilities as a caregiver in this role. So it's really critical that we acknowledge and recognize that working, being a spouse, being in a relationship as a partner, being a parent, and then also being a caregiver really something has to give. And often we find that the work-related issues are the paramount in being squeezed in those dual responsibilities. So if you're feeling that crunch and feeling that pinch, you should be. About 70% of you are really struggling with that in some way, shape, or form. And this one is really critical, and I think this is really important for everyone to have a good understanding of. As you care for persons with dementia, it is reported that there will be an impact on the caregiver's immune system for up to 3 years after their caregiving experience ends, thus increasing their chance of having and developing their own chronic illness as it might be. So again, not only are you impacted while you're doing it, but there's kind of a lasting impact for about a 3-year period where you're just continuing to feel the impact of the exhaustion, of the emotional weariness, the sadness, the loss, the overwhelmedness. That may carry on for a potential of 3 years as that caregiving experience comes to a close. So protect yourself, support yourself, give yourself a little grace. These are very real statistics and very real talking points for those of you who are in the throes of this. So here's another one that I want you to, if you get nothing out of this, these last two slides are really important. But, and I'm not trying to scare or, upset you in any way, shape, or form, but this is such a real statistic here, and it impacts so heavily. So again, if you hear nothing else, this is really valuable to hear. Our studies reveal that when someone is caregiving for a spouse or a partner, and they're under some stress, and I think that's a given as we caregive for those who have frailties, cognitively or physically, the caregiver, the actual caregiver, has a risk of dying that is 63% higher than the one of a similar age that they are not care providing for. So we're all focused on the individual with the diagnoses, and we tend to put ourselves on the back burner. We think, I got this, I can do anything. I married them, didn't I? I committed to them, didn't I? The combination of the stress, the physical demands of caregiving places you at risk for significant health concerns and issues. So again, when it's of that same age genre, that same age cohort, we tend to lose the one that we're not caring for, the one who is the caregiver, about 63% of the time more than the one that we have all our focus on. And this is such a very real statistic. So I honor this statistic. Again, you can see it comes from the Family Caregiver Alliance. This is what they do. This is the research they do. So I want you to make sure that you recognize that you going to an equal burner with your loved one that you're the caregiver for is critical. And sometimes you're going to have to go on to a bigger and a sooner burner than the one you're caring for, and try to get some help so that you can get on with taking care of your health as well. That's critical. So what are some of these signs of stress and caregiver burnout? I'm again probably teaching to the choir, or preaching to the choir, excuse me. You know this, but let's talk a little bit about this. With that stress and with that burnout comes a much more easily triggered anger that you might have with the person that you're caring for. And sometimes you take it out on them, or you take it out on even on a neutral party. That's a very human reaction to the exhaustion, to the stress, to the burnout. It doesn't feel good. You know it in a minute when you have an outburst, or you have a response to someone that isn't just ideal, because you're tired, because you're worn out, because you're burned out. This is so human. You're allowed to do this when you're doing it on a regular basis. That should be your clue that I need a break. I need some support. So don't beat yourself up too heavily on this one. Again, this happens from time to time. If it's happening more often than not, then that's a sign, that's a trigger that I've done too much, and I've got to pull back, and I've got to get some help. You may experience some weight loss or weight gain. Some of us tend to respond when stress hits us. We just eat. Others of us just can't get anything into that tummy. It just you're churning all the time. And so weight loss and weight gain is a significant identifier to too much stress, too much burnout, too much concern. You may have some feelings of despair, doom, negativity, and just flat out depression. Will this ever end? How do I get out of this crevice that I've fallen into, this hole, this concern that I'm in the thick of? I don't feel any joy in my life. This will never end. I will be here forever. All of these ongoing dooming and despairing feelings are really a good sign to tell you that you are experiencing some overwhelming stress, as it might be. Crying for no reason over a minor issue. When I was a young girl, my father had a pretty serious, sober look, and he would just look at me, and I would cry. He used to refer to me as the fastest tear in the West. He was stressful to me at times when he gave me that pretty harsh, stern look. I felt very stressed, and so I cried. There was a reason. I was stressed. You think, oh, I'm crying for no reason. But these are triggers. These are identifiers that this is more than you bargained for, more than you wanted to take on. And it may be just a small minor issue that triggers those tears, but they are real, and sometimes tears can be a great release, but they should be for you an indicator that I'm over my head, over my skill set in this experience, and the stress is just leading me to these unnecessary tears. An inability maybe to sleep or maybe dealing with some chronic insomnia. Be aware that you really do need your restorative, recuperative rest and sleep as you are a caregiver. And so if you're managing and dealing with interruptions and waking in the middle of the night, knowing that you've got a million things to handle and your mind is just whirling and going through things, that's challenging, and that just does not present itself to be able to get up the next morning and tackle the things that you have to tackle. I know that when I was in my 20s, an all-nighter was not a big deal to me. I could do an all-nighter. I had fun or schoolwork or something to do. I'm not in my 25s or 28s anymore. I don't do well with those all-nighters. I am not the person I need to be with a lack of sleep. So sleep is a really important restorative element to all of our ability to be healthy and tackle the things that we have to tackle in our lifetime. So here again, a few more thoughts in regards to those signs of stress and the caregiver burnout. You can see the isolation, gosh, the sense that I feel like I'm the only one doing this. How dare I? I'm all alone. You're not all alone. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute, how to get that help. There's that reminder of that sleep deprivation. Not a one of us makes the best decision when we're sleep deprived. The inactivity from a psychosocial perspective or from a physical perspective. I don't have time to even make a phone call to a friend to talk about how challenging this might be. Poor eating habits, again, going back to overindulging or standing at the kitchen sink, having your dinner while you're just cramming that dinner in because you've got to get ready for the evening routine and get everybody situated so that you can manage this and you can get everyone into bed so that you can have a moment or two to try to regroup. Not a healthy approach to the good nutrition we need to solve and handle the next day's events. You may have aches and pains as a result of stress and burnout. So we've got to address those and get you physical and get you feeling better and moving better, etc. You may not have time to exercise. We've got to find time to exercise and make sure that we get out there and get some fresh air and some natural vitamin D, and we're going to help you with how to carve that out. You may experience fatigue. That's very real. This overwhelming feeling that the weight of the world is on your shoulders may present with some personal fatigue and some body aches as it might be. Again, I'm going to harp on you to take care of yourselves first and equally as to the person that you're doing the caregiving for, because your health needs are just imperative, etc. And then that illness that hits you, you kind of blindsides you. I've always been the healthy one, and I've got the cancer diagnosis now because I didn't listen to my body. I didn't respond to it screaming at me that I needed to slow down, or I've got the cold now, not my loved one. I got that cold or that flu because I just didn't take care of myself and give myself the support that I needed to get through this. I think this is the toughest thing to find, and that's balance in all elements of life, but particularly in the role of a caregiver. You've got that dance between guilt and resentment. I know I've got to do this, but boy, I just resent that I've got to do this. So I think it's really important that you find the balance between that in that dance between that guilt and resentment. And that is probably going to be your tallest order, is to try to find that good dance, that good balance as it might be. So now we've given you all the negatives and all the frightening things, and you're probably sitting there thinking, yeah, I know all this. I don't like this. So let's talk about some things, some awarenesses, some coping skills, some techniques on how to make this all feel a little bit better, still doing the things that you want to do, being a caregiver, but also taking care of yourself. Caregivers, I think, are often under the guise or under the thinking that they are being selfish for putting their own needs first. You may actually have a family member who literally says, you're just being selfish. I don't know why you wouldn't just take care of dad and make everybody's life easier. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between selfish and self-care. And I've actually, the next screen that we'll see will actually speak to what that, really the difference between the two. And as we look at that, I think you'll get a good sense of the fact that I don't think there's actually a single selfish caregiver. I hope that there are many caregivers who are practicing self-care. Sometimes we get a sense that family members may feel that they owe their loved ones or that they're the only ones that can do this job of caregiving. Nobody owes anybody anything. If that is what you feel you want to give to your loved one, that's one thing. But to owe it to them, that's really shouldn't be part of our discussion or part of our language at all. And I think there are times when we all feel that we're the only ones that can do this job properly. I would contend to you that between yourself and a professional caregiver, you probably can love your loved ones better than the professional caregiver. But I would say that the professional caregiver probably has the skill set to do the job properly for your loved one. They may not do it with the love and the tender approach that you do it with, but they'll do it with the trained and proper approach as it might be. It just won't be with the extra dose of or the extra serving of love that you might bring to that individual. But what they might do for you is take the burden off you so that you can go back to enjoying and loving your loved one the way that you were intended to do that, with the relationship that you created with them. Sometimes we see culturally that a family may feel that there's a need to take care of their own. And that's a challenge. And we as care managers and caregivers, we really want to understand the family dynamics, the cultural perspective of that family. And we want to respect that. And we want to see how we can walk alongside that family to support them and honor their cultural differences. But I think, again, making sure that we know that we are there to try to assist, not to take over, and we're there to respect and honor the cultural differences, but also to help make sure that the caregiver gets the support they need. Sometimes our caregivers have a feel that they were not given really a choice in this decision of caregiving for an individual or a loved one. And perhaps they were forced to take on the role of caregiver or decision maker, etc. I'm certain it can feel that way, but I'm also certain that we can have dialogue and discussion about how that feels and talk with the family about, many members of the family about that interpretation and how we can change that dialogue a little bit, change that channel just a little bit. So it's important to acknowledge that that's the feel, but what can we do to alleviate that sense of obligation and bring in some support so they can feel a desire, not an obligation to be the caregiver. And I think I am such the guilty party in this final bullet point here with this personal awareness. Caregivers are often reluctant to ask for help. It is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of maturity and intelligence. And I am so guilty of this. So often I will say, oh no, I have to do this. I'm the mother. This is my job. And I tend not to ask for help. There is nothing more gracious, more responsible, and more appropriate than asking for help. You may even need help to know how to ask for help. It's a science, it's an art, it's a very worthy lesson to learn, and we're always happy to help you on how to coach that, how to position that, and how to learn how to ask for help. And then the other side of that coin is you gotta receive it when you ask for it. Gotta learn how to do that. One of the tougher things I'm going to ask you to try to learn and do, but important. So here's that definition, and I literally took the definitions of selfish and self-care from the Merriam-Webster dictionary, and I put them to paper. So selfish is an adjective. It's a person, action, or motive. It is lacking consideration for others, concerned chiefly with one's own personal profit or pleasure. And I don't think there's a caregiver on this planet that gets any personal profit or pleasure out of being a selfish caregiver. I just don't. I think that's a conundrum. It doesn't fit. Selfish and caregiving doesn't fit. You are not getting anything out of this. If you're a reasonable and sensible caregiver, it is not a selfish act. What is important in caregiving is self-care. So look at that definition. It's a noun. It's the practice of taking action to preserve one's or improve one's own health, taking an active role in protecting one's own well-being and happiness, in particular during periods of stress / caregiving. So I think these both speak to a very definitive approach to caregiving. Selfishness really isn't a part of caregiving, but self-care has got to be a part of caregiving. So I hope you'll be reminded if someone ever says to you, "What? You're going to the doctor? Dad needs coverage. Dad needs help. How can you go to the doctor? We all know there's nothing wrong with you. How can you be so selfish?" I hope you'll turn to them and say, "I'm not being selfish. I'm taking self-care so that I can be there for Dad when he truly needs me." It's a very, very, very important differentiation and distinction between these two elements. Hang and cling to that self-care and know that there isn't a selfish bone in a caregiver's body by any stretch. So don't accept that type of language in your family dynamic, as it might be. Here's an important one, and this goes back to, again, self-care. Put your own oxygen mask on first, and then you attend to the others that you are assisting. You take care of yourself. That's critical. When you do that, the benefits are two, if not multifold. This is the language we get on the airlines when they say to us, if you're with someone who needs assistance, put your mask on first and then turn to your loved one who needs assistance, large or small, young or old. We've got to get our own mask on first, our own self-care first, and then we will be a much better caregiver who can attend to the needs of our loved ones. I think it's critical that we have that balance in our life. So here are a couple of tips for managing your caregiver stress. We think this is a critical element of what we want to talk about and how we want to approach getting that balance, getting that dance in play. You've got to reduce some of your personal stress. Examine whether your role, in this caregiving experience is voluntary or if you had no choice, and how are you going to attend to cleaning that up and taking care of that and talking with others, setting up a way with which to lighten your load and bring in some of that additional support in your caregiving experience so that you do reduce your personal stress. If you are there for a hope of healing a damaged relationship, you need to set some realistic expectations of what you can achieve at this time. This may, at the end of life or the stressful period of aging, may not be the best time to fix those damaged relationships. You may have passed that opportunity, or you may have to be very cautious about picking the times that you can get that healing accomplished. And you may have to give up that healing altogether. You can't change others' perspectives of things, but you can change your own. So setting a realistic expectation of what you can actually achieve at this time. And on a personal level, I remember when my mother was at the end of her life, and my father was long gone, so unfortunately, and there are five of us in my family, and I have four brothers. I'm the only girl, and mom was fortunate to be able to stay at home. She had a cancer, so we had a very short life uh, of caregiving that we had to attend to. It's much easier to attend to something when you have a time frame, a general sense of how long this might last. And I remember sitting down with all my brothers and saying, if we could share the responsibilities, if someone could spend more time. And we had one brother in particular who lived in the same area that she did. And he very, very sweetly said, you know what? I can move in with mom. I can do this. We know we've got about a 6 month, she was on hospice, we've got about a 6 month period of time. And his response was, or his message to us was, I was a hell of a teenager. And 20 something, I gave mom and dad a whole lot of grief. I think this is my opportunity, I think, to essentially say, hey, I'm awful sorry about those teenage years and those 20 somethings. Boy, did I give you a run for money. I can help you now. And I hope you'll see this as my apology and my mea culpa to you. And I think it was great. He thought, this will be something I can give back to her because she put up with an awful lot. And we said, that's great. We'll give you that opportunity to redeem yourself, as it might be. But it could come with some expectations and some challenges that you may not be aware of. And so at one point I said to him, mom's probably going to need some help bathing. I got it. I'm making my amends. I got this. And I said to my eldest brother, you may want some help there. And I remember after the first bathing experience, he called me and he said, yeah, I don't want to do that again. That's my mom. Maybe you could help me find someone who could do that so that I don't have to experience that with her. I still want to be there for her. I still want to help her, but I don't think I should be bathing him. Or bathing her. So, again, here we have setting realistic expectations of what you can achieve in whatever shape and form that takes on, but realizing maybe you can't do it all. And so how do we reach out and find some assistance so we don't have that caregiver stress, excuse me. Prioritize and pick your battles. You can't do it all. You can't solve everything. There is no pajama police. There is, if mom or dad or your loved one occasionally wants to have dessert before they have lunch, you've got to let go of some things. So you've got to pick your battles the best you can. Some compassionate fibbing may be necessary. You want to give your loved one the grace of who they are and not setting such tight boundaries and having so many battles that they're stressed and you are stressed. Pick and choose your battles as you go along and let go of what you can let go of so that everybody finds their grace and their joy and their empathy in this experience. Don't make it more stressful than it has to, and it already is. Again, here's that continued theme that we talk about. Take care of your own physical health. Take care of your emotional health. Take care of your mental health. Go for those exams and those screening tests and those follow-ups that are necessary. They are so critical in your overall well-being and your ability to continue on and enjoy and support your loved one. Do not, I repeat, do not put yourself on the back burner day in and day out. It's certainly understandable if occasionally you feel that there's a priority of putting your loved one on the front burner, but it cannot be every day, all day, to the exclusion of your needs as well. And I think if you can identify and be at peace with what that you cannot change, and there's much that you cannot change in this course of aging. We don't have, if you have that kind of power, definitely let me know in the chat that you have the ability to change everything and set it straight, because I haven't found that ability yet. find your peace with what you cannot change and accept that there will be some things that will happen and some experiences that will occur that will not feel great, and will not go smoothly, but you're there, you're present, you're trying, you're doing the best you can with what you've got. And therefore you're gonna carry on each and every day the best way that you possibly can, getting the help you need, making those conciliatory agreements, compromising as it might be, and then knowing that tomorrow is a fresh day, where you get to start anew, and you get to give it your best shot yet once again. No harm, no foul, no carryover from day to day in that regard. Here's a couple of suggestions that I think are really helpful, to consider. You've got to practice that self-care. You've got to go for that walk or that run or that breath of fresh air or that nap or whatever it might be. I know that's an easy thing to say, but you have to embrace it. This is the time when you ask people for help and you book them for that help and you walk away and you go for that walk. So when a neighbor comes over and says, boy, I can see that you've got your hands full. I do. How can I help you? You get your calendar and you say, could you come tomorrow at 3 o'clock and give me 1/2 hour so I can take a walk? You can, or it's on the calendar. Thank you so much. Instead of saying, oh, no worries, I've got this. When they offer help, you book that help. You ask a family member or a friend to sit with your loved one so you can have the respite, the support, the minute apart, the minute away to regroup, reboot, breathe, and attend to the things that you need to attend to. The next line here says, go out to dinner, schedule a spa treatment. Don't do that now. You can't do that now. I know COVID has thrown a definite wrench in some of these things, but even just going out to pick up the dinner and bring it back so that you have something special to munch on. It may not even be a dinner for your loved one. Maybe it's a dinner just for you because your loved one can't enjoy that dinner. Nothing wrong with you going out to get something that's very special to you, that when everything is calm, cool, and collected and settled and your loved one is tucked in, that you couldn't turn to and enjoy for a moment. So again, we just have to be a little creative. I know COVID has really set some boundaries and some challenges to some of these self-care practices, but we just got to think outside the box and be a little bit more creative than ever. And I think we can bypass some of these worries and concerns. With the COVID vaccines coming into play, I think we can all see that there's this very small light at the very long end of the very long tunnel. It's coming, guys. I promise you that. We may not be quite there yet, but it's coming. So get yourself ready. Make a list of those things that you're going to do when we've got some of these restrictions lifted, and go out and do them. And sometimes it means you get a little something special. You go out and purchase something that you normally wouldn't maybe splurge on. But let's be honest, that line right there that says you deserve it, you do. You really, really deserve it. I don't care what anybody else says. You know it, you deserve it, you should get it. Doesn't mean it's an everyday practice, but you want to think outside that box and practice taking care of yourself as it might be. You might want to attend some sort of support group. Again, I know COVID has made this a little bit difficult for us, but sometimes we feel better when we realize that there are others that are going through the same experience that we're going through. Not everybody loves, to share their feelings in a support group type environment, but sometimes even just going and listening. We've got 2 ears, 1 mouth. Sometimes it's better to use those proportionally. So consider a support group. There's a lot of them online, and if you need assistance in finding them, we'll help you find them. But just listening to others and realizing, oh, you've done that too, or you've had that experience too, is so very helpful in so many ways. So, and then again, ask for some help and accept that help. Help can be informal and formal. And we can help you kind of discern that. It's wonderful to have that informal help. That's your family, that's your neighbors, that's your church. They are so well-meaning and they want to help you. Sometimes it's really wise to have formal resources lined up as well. So that's that paid caregiver who you know is going to show up. They're not going to get distracted by their granddaughter, like your friend, your neighbor might, when the granddaughter needs a ride to her piano lesson or needs oversight because the daughter just can't be available to that. So a formal resource, someone who's on the clock, who's going to show up, no excuses accepted, giving you that respite, that opportunity even to get to the grocery store, as it might be, whatever it might be. You know, people are eager to see how they can help. They want to be a part of your lives and be of some resource to you. So when you ask for help and it's offered, I really encourage you to accept this. And I'm learning to do this. I am learning to say to friends and family, help, I need help. I need a break. Please come in and help my loved one so I can have 30 minutes to myself. And I'm learning that I have to book this and I have to accept it and I have to show gratitude for it. Here's a couple of other things that I think are really important in your self-care. You've got to develop some strategies to promote your own self-care. The physical body needs self-care. The emotional heart and your soul needs self-care. Your psychological self-care is important. Your mind needs that refreshing, that good night's sleep, that respite from the constant ongoing responsibilities you have as a caregiver. And then your spiritual soul needs some self-care. And it doesn't mean it's all exclusively in a religious capacity. If that fills your bucket, then that's what you want to go after. But your soul, your spirit, your spiritual soul needs that opportunity to promote self-care. So really important that you carve out all these categories and support the whole body, the whole being in your ability to promote that self-care, as it might be. And some of those key elements that you're going to resolve and address through these strategies are going to speak to stress relief. You'll be less short-tempered, less reactive, more proactive if you get some of that stress relief, as it might be. I can't speak enough about good nutrition and hydration. We are all parched all the time and we need to be continually hydrating ourselves. I teach a class that talks about hydration and nutrition when I teach for the state. And most of us as seniors, and I'll throw myself in that ring, guys, I am a senior. I am over the age of 60. We don't even realize until we are actually actively dehydrated, that we are in need of hydration. Our thirst mechanism isn't working so great. So the minute I say to myself, boy, I'm parched, I'm actually on my way to dehydration. The body is 80% fluid. It needs to be hydrated at all times. So stopping for a minute and getting good nutrition and good hydration in your system is an element to your self-care. Good sleep, can't say it enough. Make sure that you get the hours you need. Some of us run on 7 hours a night. Some of us need 9 hours a night. Whatever your sleep needs are, make sure you're getting those met. It's really critical. Many times we find that caregivers, paid caregivers coming in at night to keep an eye on your loved one so that you can get the good sleep means you can wake up in the morning and face the music, face the responsibilities. That's a very common adjustment and support system to get that good sleep. You need to be connected. You need to have people in your life or a connection to that spirituality, that emotion, that heart and soul. It doesn't mean you need 550 friends on Facebook. It means you need your circle. And your circle that cares about you and is interested in you. And it may be a combination of family and friends and longtime friends and new friends. But bottom line is we as humans need connection. I know we come into this world alone and we actually leave this world alone. But all throughout our time on this planet, the lion's share, or the greater majority of us, are looking for that connection in our partners, in our relationships, and in our love with our loved ones. Connection is a key element to good self-care. We need physical activity. We need to get out there and go. We need to walk. We need to move. It doesn't. Not asking you to run a marathon or be a jogger but a walk, looking at Mother Earth and smelling the roses. I don't know if I'd say go out and walk today. I can see the trees are moving heavily. This is a tough day to get out there and walk. We'd be blown to smithereens perhaps. But so this is a day we might put off our outdoor activity, but in reality, we all need to keep moving. If you don't use it, you lose it. So getting that physical activity going is a key element to all of our success. I think we need to practice kindness as often and as frequently as possible and as broadly as possible. Kindness begets kindness. So make sure that you're practicing as much kindness as possible to others. Sometimes it's hard to find it, isn't it? It's hard to give it. We don't always feel it, but kindness is a very important element of self-care. Kindness to yourself, kindness to others. You get it back in spades. And then again, that spirituality, that touch with whatever connects you to a spiritual soul, a spiritual whole. That's a really important part of our self-care. And I encourage you to practice all of those. Oftentimes we get the question, when do we say when? When is enough enough? I can't tell you, every circumstance is very individualized, so I can't give you categoric answers to this. This is not a black and white answer, but there are a couple of ideas and thoughts that we would want you to get in your mind about when is it time to say, I can't do this anymore, enough is enough. When your loved one is no longer safe, and when others are telling you that your loved one is no longer safe. Safety is really my key indicator as to when to talk with a family about when is it time to say, I can't do this anymore. When your loved one could harm themselves or others, that's an important criteria in figuring out when is it time to say, I can't do this. When you know that your own health and well-being or safety are at risk, that's an important part of the component and the configuration of knowing when is it time to say enough is enough. And that when the stress of caregiving is impacting your ability to provide proper care, it's time to say when at that point. I think I had a client one time, the most devoted, wonderful husband to his wife who had a very significant dementia diagnosis. And he said, Gail, when am I not enough for her? And I said to him, one day you will not be enough for her. And you will be the one to know that, and you will be the one to draw the line in the sand. And he was very angry. He did not like that. He thought he was always going to be enough for her. And so eventually his line in the sand came. And to this day, he'll say to me, I'll never forget the day, Gail, you told me that I might not be enough for her. I was so mad at you, but now I'm so happy that you did say that to me, because there did come a time when my skill set, my love, my devotion was really not enough for her. It didn't provide her the proper care that kept her safe and not at risk, and it kept him safe and not at risk. He's come to recognize that that was a valuable statement. He sure didn't like it at the time, and I don't blame him. And I want you to know, really, again, if you get very little out of this, I hope not, but if you get anything out of this, there's no definitive right or wrong decision when you're facing all these types of changes. Good dialogue, good conversation, good communications, good discussions. You'll make the best decision that you possibly can with the facts that are in front of you. So please don't ever woulda, coulda, shoulda yourself. It doesn't get you anywhere. You make the best decision that you can with the facts you have in front of you at the time, and you move forward. That's the best thing you can do. Please be reminded that you're not alone in this. It may feel like it. I understand that. We've got all kinds of resources available to you. You just have to reach out and ask for them, and we will guide you. Your friends will guide you, will guide your family. But there are, I promise you, there's resources out there to get you through these stumbling points. But in the meantime, take care of yourself. You're not selfish. You're practicing self-care. And thank you for being caregivers extraordinaire. That's what you are. Thank you for being willing to listen today. That means you're reaching out for help and concern and care. And hopefully by the end of today, you'll be able to better readily accept help as it might be, and you'll put yourself on that equal burner to your loved one, if not occasionally on that front burner as it might be. So thank you very, very much for your time and for your consideration today. I'll